All right, so you want to nail that automation engineering technician interview, right? Well, we've got a ton of great info to help you prep.
Awesome.
You've got that career guide, which kind of gives you the big picture.
Yep.
The interview guide that dives deep into specific questions they might throw your way.
Mm-hmm.
And then info on how RoleCatcher and its AI
Uh-huh.
can give you like a secret weapon.
Really helpful stuff.
So are you ready to unpack all this and get you prepped to impress?
Definitely. Let's do it.
All right, so first up, let's hit that career guide.
All right.
It paints a picture of what these automation engineering technicians actually do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your takeaways from that?
Well, it really stood out to me how much this role is all about collaboration. I mean, you're working hand in hand with engineers, developing these really cool automation applications.
Uh-huh.
And then you're actually bringing those applications to life. You're building and testing the systems, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Right. It's not all just theory. You're actually getting your hands dirty.
Exactly. And of course, there's the whole troubleshooting aspect, when those inevitable glitches pop up.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love those.
You got to be ready to dive in and figure out what's going wrong and how to fix it.
Makes sense. So you're basically the one making sure all those automated systems are humming along smoothly, keeping the whole operation running like a well-oiled machine.
Haha, that's a good way to put it.
Now, I know you're particularly interested in, all that cutting-edge technology.
Oh, yeah.
Does the career guide touch on that at all? Like, does this role really put you on the front lines of those advancements?
It totally does. It emphasizes how this role is all about working with the latest and greatest tech in manufacturing.
Cool.
So yeah, you'll definitely be exposed to the cutting edge, no doubt about it.
All right, so knowing all this, what kind of skills and experience do you think those interviewers are going to be looking for?
Well, based on the career guide, they're going to want someone with a solid understanding of automation principles right off the bat. And then hands-on experience with building and testing systems, that's crucial.
Makes sense.
And of course, you need strong problem-solving skills, got to be able to handle those troubleshooting moments when they come up.
Right. Got to be able to think on your feet.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about those interview questions. The interview guide you gave us has 10 solid examples of questions you might get asked. Want to tackle those one by one?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1, and they hit you with this right out the gate. What inspired you to pursue a career in automation engineering?
Classic.
Pretty standard question, but it seems like they're not just fishing for a generic answer here. What do you think?
No, absolutely not. They want to see that spark, that genuine passion that drives you toward this field.
Right.
This is your chance to really showcase what makes you tick.
Okay, so the interview guide suggests sharing like a personal story here. Do you have an example of what that might look like?
Oh, sure. Imagine you built a robot in high school. Right? And it won a competition. You could talk about the thrill of seeing your creation come to life and how that experience really ignited your passion for automation.
I like that. A little humble brag never hurts.
Right. Or maybe you were inspired by a family member who works in manufacturing and they showed you the ropes.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever your story is, just make sure it's personal and it shows why you're genuinely excited about this field.
Right. Got to be authentic. Now, what if they follow up with something like, what aspect of automation excites you the most? What kind of answer would really impress them there?
Well, think about what truly captivates you about automation. Is it the problem solving, the challenge of designing complex systems, or maybe the satisfaction of seeing a project come together seamlessly? Just focus on a specific area and then explain why it gets you fired up.
I like that. Okay, so on to question number 2. And they get a little more technical here. They ask, what is your experience with programmable logic controllers? PLCs.
Yeah, time to show off those technical chops.
What's the best way to approach a question like this?
Well, you definitely want to be specific. Showcase your hands-on experience with PLCs.
Okay.
Talk about projects where you've programmed them, troubleshooted them, or even just worked extensively with them.
Right.
The key here is to really demonstrate your practical skills.
Yeah, because they want to know you can actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly.
Now, the guide has a great tip here. They say quantify your experience whenever possible.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So instead of just saying, I worked on a project with PLCs, you could say, I programmed 5 PLCs for this large-scale automation system.
That's much better.
It paints a much clearer picture of your actual involvement. What are some potential follow-up questions they might ask to dig a little deeper?
Oh, they might ask you to describe a specific time you had to troubleshoot a PLC problem.
Okay.
Like what were the steps you took to resolve it?
All right.
They might also be curious about specific PLC programming languages that you're familiar with,
Hmm.
or the types of PLC hardware you've worked with. They want to see how deep your knowledge really goes.
Got it. Now, this seems like a perfect time to bring up RoleCatcher.
Oh, absolutely. This is where RoleCatcher can really shine.
So how can its AI help with this kind of question?
Well, it can actually analyze the specific job description you're applying for
Oh, wow.
and then suggest relevant details to include in your answers.
Okay.
For example, let's say the job description mentions a specific PLC programming language. RoleCatcher will actually remind you to highlight your experience with that language in your answer.
Oh, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
So it takes the guesswork out of tailoring your responses to what the company's actually looking for.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, on to question number 3. They ask you to explain the difference between a sensor and an actuator. Back to basics.
This one seems pretty straightforward. How do you suggest approaching it?
Yeah, it's all about demonstrating your understanding of those fundamental concepts.
Right. Just keep your explanation clear, concise, avoid overly technical jargon.
Okay.
Think of it as explaining it to someone who's brand new to the field.
So like your grandma.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Now, can you give us a simple way to explain that difference between a sensor and an actuator?
Sure. So think of a sensor like your eyes.
Okay.
It gathers information about the environment, and an actuator is like your muscles. It takes action based on that information.
Ooh, I like that. A nice little analogy. Now, what if they follow up with, can you give me an example of a sensor and actuator working together in like an automated system? What's a good real-world example that would really illustrate this?
Okay, well, think about a robotic arm, right?
Okay, yeah.
It's got sensors that can detect the position of an object,
Oh,
and then it uses actuators to actually move the arm to grasp that object.
oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a perfect example of how those two components work together in a real-world system.
Great example. All right, question number 4. And this one's all about efficiency. They ask you, how do you ensure that those automated systems are running efficiently and effectively? What are they really bigging for here, do you think?
I think they want to see your proactive approach to maintaining and optimizing those systems.
Okay.
It's not just about fixing problems when they pop up.
Right.
It's about preventing them in the first place.
So what kind of examples would really showcase that proactive mindset that you're thinking ahead?
Well, you could talk about implementing, preventative maintenance schedules. That way you're catching those potential issues early on.
Okay, that's smart.
You could also mention using system monitoring tools.
Right.
Those can help you identify any anomalies in performance, before they turn into big problems.
Right, so you can catch those red flags early on.
Exactly.
What about if you've actually implemented process improvements?
Oh, that's a great one.
Like if you've done things to boost efficiency and cut down on downtime, could you talk about that?
Absolutely. If you have examples of process improvements you've made, definitely bring those to the table.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, let's say they want to dig a little deeper and they follow up with, can you describe a time you actually improved the efficiency of an automated system? Like, how would you tackle a question like that?
The STAR method's your best bet there.
Okay, remind me what that is again.
It stands for situation, task, action, result.
Oh, right.
So you're basically laying out the whole story for them.
Got it.
Describe the specific situation where you spotted an opportunity for improvement, the tasks you were given, the actions you took to make those improvements, and then, of course, the positive results you achieved.
Okay, awesome. That's a great framework for answering that kind of question.
Yeah.
Before we jump into question number 5, I want to touch on RoleCatcher one more time.
Makes sense.
How can its AI help us with these kind of efficiency questions?
Well, RoleCatcher can actually pick out keywords and phrases from that job description
Oh, wow, okay.
that are super relevant to this question.
So it's kind of like it's reading between the lines for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, if the job description mentions something like continuous improvement, RoleCatcher will remind you to highlight your experience in that area.
Okay, that's so helpful. Make sure your answer is hitting those points that the employer really cares about.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to question number 5. And we're back to those problem-solving skills. They ask, how do you approach troubleshooting a complex automated system?
Okay, yeah.
I feel like this one is all about showing off your detective skills,
Absolutely.
Like, how do you untangle those complex problems?
They want to see your systematic approach to identifying and resolving issues.
Okay.
So it's like being a detective, piecing together clues to solve a mystery.
Right. I love that.
So how do you showcase those detective skills?
Yeah, like how do you lay out your process for them?
Well, think about those steps you take when you're troubleshooting. Do you start by gathering information from the operators? Do you check system logs? Do you do any visual inspections?
Right.
Just walk them through your process, highlighting how you take a logical and systematic approach to those problems.
Okay, I like that. Show them you have a plan of attack.
hmm
What are some potential follow-up questions they might ask, just to dig a little deeper there?
Oh, they might ask about specific tools or techniques that you use for troubleshooting.
Okay.
Or they might ask about a specific time when you faced a really challenging problem and how you eventually cracked the code.
All right, like how you overcame those obstacles.
That's exactly.
Okay, now let's say they throw you a curveball and they ask, have you ever been in a situation where you just couldn't find the solution right away? What did you do?
Oh, that's a good one.
Like what kind of answer would show them that you're resourceful and persistent, that you don't just give up easily?
I think honesty is key here. Don't be afraid to admit that you've hit roadblocks before.
Right, yeah.
Everyone does, but what matters is how you handle those situations.
Okay, so what do you do?
Talk about a time you faced a really stubborn issue, one that didn't have an easy fix. Explain those steps you took to research and explore potential solutions.
Okay.
And how you eventually, found that breakthrough and resolved the problem.
Right, I like that.
And don't be shy about mentioning if you reached out to colleagues or used online resources. That just shows you're proactive and resourceful.
Yeah, it shows you're not afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to question number 6. They ask, have you ever developed and implemented a new automated system completely from scratch?
Okay, yeah.
So I'm guessing this is your chance to really shine if you have experience in this area.
Absolutely. This is where you walk them through the whole process, from those initial design and planning stages to implementation and testing.
Okay.
Just emphasize your role and contributions at each step along the way.
Got it. Now, what if our listener hasn't had the chance to, lead a project like that yet?
Yeah, it happens.
What's a good way to approach this question?
Well, even if you haven't spearheaded an entire project from scratch, you can still talk about your involvement in developing or implementing certain parts of an automated system.
Okay.
So highlight those specific tasks you were responsible for, the skills you used, and those important lessons you learned along the way.
Okay, I like that. So you can still showcase your experience even if you haven't led the whole project.
Exactly. It's about highlighting what you have done, not dwelling on what you haven't.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Now, what if they follow up with, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced during that project and how did you overcome them?
Well, be honest about the challenges you faced, but focus on the solutions you found.
Okay.
Did you have to wrestle with a tricky technical issue?
Yeah.
Did you have to collaborate with a difficult team member? Or did you have to adapt to some changing requirements?
Oh, yeah, those curveballs always come up.
Exactly. Just highlight those problem-solving skills, your communication abilities, and your ability to adapt to those unexpected twists and turns.
Great advice. Okay, moving right along to question number 7. They want to know about downtime, and they ask, what strategies do you use to minimize downtime for automated systems?
Okay, a crucial question.
Seems like they're really looking for that proactive thinking here again, right?
Definitely.
They want to see that you understand how important it is to keep those systems up and running smoothly.
Exactly.
Like, what are some concrete examples that would really wow them with your proactive approach?
Well, you could talk about, for instance, creating a system for monitoring critical components, or one that alerts you to those potential failures before they even occur.
Oh, that's smart.
Or maybe you developed a troubleshooting guide that helps your team resolve issues more efficiently.
Okay, that's a great idea.
It's all about thinking ahead and putting those safeguards in place.
Right. And those are great examples because they show that you're not just reacting to problems. They're actively trying to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, now before we move on, any tips on how RoleCatcher can lend a hand with this particular question?
Oh yeah, RoleCatcher can definitely be helpful here. Its AI can analyze that job description and pick out those keywords that relate to minimizing downtime.
Okay.
For example, if they see the phrase preventative maintenance or system reliability, RoleCatcher will gently nudge you to emphasize your experience in those areas.
Oh, that's great.
And just make sure that your answer really resonates with the specific things that employer cares about.
Perfect. All right, let's tackle question number 8. And this one goes back to testing your fundamental knowledge.
Yeah.
They ask, can you explain the difference between open loop and closed loop control systems?
A classic control systems question.
So how would you explain that difference in a way that's, easy to understand?
Well, you could use analogies. Those always help.
Oh, yeah. Great idea.
Think of an open-loop system like a sprinkler that's set to run for a certain amount of time. Okay.
Regardless of whether it's actually raining or not.
So it's just kind of doing its thing no matter what.
Exactly.
Okay.
But a closed-loop system, that's more like a thermostat.
Okay.
It's constantly monitoring the temperature and adjusting the heating or cooling to maintain a comfortable temperature.
Oh, I like that.
So it's constantly getting feedback and making adjustments based on that feedback.
Right. So the closed-loop system is a little bit smarter.
Exactly.
It's kind of like it's thinking for itself.
In a way, yeah.
Now, what if they follow up with, give me an example of each type of control system used in a real-world application.
Okay, yeah.
What examples would you use to really illustrate the difference?
For open loop, you could mention a simple timer, like the one you might use to turn your lights on and off at set times.
Right.
And for closed loop, you could talk about a cruise control system in a car.
Right.
It uses feedback from the speedometer to maintain a constant speed.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So even if you hit a hill, the system adjusts to keep you moving at that set speed.
Great examples.
Yeah.
All right, on to question number 9. And this one's all about staying ahead of the curve. They ask, how do you stay up to date with all the latest automation technologies and trends?
Yeah.
This seems like a question where they want to see that you're a lifelong learner, that you're passionate about this field, and you're committed to growing.
Absolutely. It's a fast-moving field, so staying current is absolutely essential.
Okay, so how can you showcase that dedication to staying up to date?
Well, be specific. Mention industry conferences you've attended, online courses or certifications you've completed, professional organizations you're a part of, or even just blogs and publications that you follow.
Okay, so don't just give them a generic answer.
Right.
Give them some concrete examples of how you stay informed.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now, what if they say, what emerging automation technology are you most excited about and why?
Ooh, a good one.
What kind of answer would really impress them there?
Well, think about those trends that are shaping the future of automation.
Okay.
Is it artificial intelligence, the industrial Internet of Things, or maybe robotics?
Yeah, there's so much happening right now.
Exactly. Just choose a technology that genuinely excites you.
Right.
And explain why you're excited about its potential, what impact you think it could have.
Right. Show you're a forward thinker. You're not just stuck in the past.
Exactly.
Okay, great. We've reached the final question in this set, and it's a big one. They ask, how do you ensure that those automated systems are safe for operators and comply with all those relevant regulations?
Yeah, safety is paramount. Can't overemphasize that.
Clearly a crucial aspect of the job. So what kind of examples would really demonstrate your commitment to safety?
Well, you could think about your experience with risk assessments, safety training programs,
Okay.
lockout, tagout procedures,
Right.
machine guarding, and any other measures you've taken to create a safe working environment.
So you really got to show them you're taking this seriously.
Absolutely.
And be specific. Don't just say, I care about safety.
Right.
Mention those regulations you're familiar with, like OSHA standards, and how you actually apply them in your work.
Exactly. They want to see that you know your stuff.
Okay, now one last follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say they ask you, can you describe a time you actually identified a potential safety hazard and the steps you took to address it? What kind of scenario would really demonstrate that proactive approach?
Okay. You could talk about a time when you noticed, let's say, a machine guard was loose or damaged.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then explain how you followed those proper procedures to report the issue. You locked out the machine to prevent any access.
Right.
And then worked with the maintenance team to actually get that guard repaired.
Okay.
Just emphasize that you followed those safety protocols to a T and that you're committed to ensuring a safe work environment.
That's a fantastic example. All right, so we've tackled all 10 of those interview questions.
Nice work.
Before we wrap up this part, any final thoughts on how RoleCatcher can help with that overall interview prep?
I think it's important to remember that RoleCatcher's AI is an incredible tool for tailoring your answers to those specific job descriptions.
Okay.
It can really analyze those descriptions, identify the key skills and requirements, and suggest relevant details you can weave into your responses.
Right.
Plus, it gives you super valuable feedback on your answers.
Oh, wow.
Helping you refine your delivery and make a lasting impression.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's like having a personal coach in your pocket.
I love that. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. We explored the role, tackled those tricky interview questions, and learned how RoleCatcher can be your secret weapon.
It's been fun.
I'm excited to dive even deeper in part 2.
Me too.
We'll explore career growth insights and more resources to help you land that dream job. See you then.
See ya! Welcome back. I feel like we really dug into those interview questions in part 1.
Yeah, we really broke them down. And we saw how RoleCatcher can be such a game changer when it comes to, tailoring your answers and really making sure you stand out.
Seriously, I mean, that AI is pretty impressive.
But let's not forget about that career guide, right? It's not just about interview tips. It's got a ton of other great insights, too.
Oh, for sure. It really dives deep into those essential skills and knowledge you need to succeed in this role.
Yeah, and it even breaks it down by percentage, like what employers value most, which is super helpful. What really stood out to you in those skills?
Well, computers and electronics is at the top of the list, like way up there at 75%, which tells you right away how important that technical foundation is going to be.
Wow, that's a big chunk. So what all falls under that category?
It's pretty broad. It covers things like circuit boards, processors, computer hardware and software, applications, programming, the whole shebang.
That makes sense. I mean, this role is all about working with those computer-controlled systems, right?
Exactly. And then right behind that, we've got engineering and technology at 71%.
Okay, so it's still pretty high up there.
Yeah, so you need a good grasp of how technology is designed, developed, and used in different settings.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then we've got mechanical, also at 71%, which highlights the whole, understanding how machines work their designs, uses, how to repair them, maintain them.
It's interesting how those three are all clustered together at the top, like
Yeah.
really emphasizing that you got to have that solid technical background.
Totally, but it's not all just about technical skills, is it?
No, definitely not. I noticed that the career guide lists critical thinking at 57%.
Yeah, super important. You got to be able to think logically, use reasoning to solve problems, and make good decisions on the fly, especially when those, glitches we talked about pop up.
Right. And reading comprehension is also listed at 57%. I imagine you're going to be dealing with a lot of technical manuals and documentation, right?
Oh, yeah. You got to be able to understand those instructions and really absorb that information.
Makes sense. And of course, we can't forget repairing and troubleshooting, both also at 57%.
Essential skills for this role, for sure. It's like you're a detective and mechanic all rolled into one.
I love that. So what else is on that list?
Well, equipment maintenance and operations monitoring are both at 55%, which makes sense, right? You got to keep those systems running smoothly and efficiently.
Right. And ensuring the quality of the final product is key, too. So there's quality control analysis, also at 55%.
You got it.
Now, this is interesting. Mathematics is listed twice at 54% and 69%. So math skills are definitely a must-have for this role.
Oh, yeah. You'll be using math to solve problems, analyze data, and make all sorts of calculations, so brush up on those math skills.
Good to know. Now, let's not forget about those all-important soft skills, right? We talked about critical thinking, but I also see active learning, active listening, and complex problem solving, all at 52%.
Yeah, those are essential for working effectively with others, understanding those complex systems, and just continuously learning and adapting, because this field is constantly evolving, so you got to be able to keep up.
And operation and control is also listed at 52%, which makes sense. I mean, you're going to be the one operating and controlling those automated systems, right?
Exactly. And, beyond just listing specific skills, the career guide also dives into the knowledge you'll need.
Oh, like what?
Like familiarity with PLC programming, CAD software, and just a solid understanding of how industrial automation systems work in general.
It seems like there's a lot to learn, but it also sounds pretty exciting.
It definitely is.
And they really stress the importance of staying up to date, too. Like attending industry conferences and workshops, reading journals and publications, and joining professional organizations.
Yeah, continuous learning is key in this field. There's always something new to discover.
All right, so now that we've explored those skill and knowledge areas, let's revisit some of those interview questions. But this time, let's really dig into the specific tips that the interview guide provides.
Oh, yeah. It goes way beyond just the surface level, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. So let's start with that first question again. What inspired you to pursue a career in automation engineering? The interview guide really emphasizes showcasing your genuine passion here.
Right. They don't want to hear some generic, canned response. They want to see what really gets you excited about this field.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, think about what initially sparked your interest. Was it a specific project you worked on, a mentor who inspired you, or maybe you've always been fascinated by how things work, taking things apart and putting them back together?
Right.
Sharing a personal anecdote, can really make your answer memorable. It shows you're not just going through the motions, you're genuinely passionate about this.
Okay, I love that. Now, imagine they follow up with, what aspect of automation excites you the most? How can you make your answer really stand out?
I think it's all about being specific. Instead of just saying, I love everything about automation, focus on a particular area that truly captivates you. Maybe it's robotics, PLC programming, or the design and implementation of complex systems. Whatever it is, be enthusiastic and articulate why it gets you fired up.
That's a great way to show you've really thought about this and you're not just, throwing out generic answers.
Exactly. Show them you're a thinker.
Okay, let's move on to the second question. What is your experience with programmable logic controllers, PLCs? The interview guide stresses showcasing those practical skills, right?
Definitely. Don't just tell them you know about PLCs. Show them what you can actually do.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Talk about specific projects where you've programmed, troubleshooted, or worked extensively with PLCs. And whenever possible, quantify your experience. Don't just say, I worked on a project. Say something like, I programmed 5 PLCs for a large-scale automation system. It gives them a much clearer picture of your involvement.
That's a great tip. So much more impactful. Now, what if they follow up with something like, can you describe a time you had to troubleshoot a PLC problem? What steps did you take? How would you approach a question like that?
The STAR method is your best friend in these situations.
Yes. Situation, task, action, result.
You got it. So you're basically telling a story. You set the scene, describe the task you're given, outline the actions you took to troubleshoot the problem, and then, of course, highlight the positive results you achieved.
Okay, so it's all about painting a vivid picture for them and walking them through your thought process.
Exactly.
All right, on to question number 3. Can you explain the difference between a sensor and an actuator? The interview guide suggests keeping it simple and maybe using analogies to illustrate the difference.
Oh, yeah. Analogies are great. They make complex concepts so much easier to understand. Think of a sensor like your 5 senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. It's how a system gathers information about its environment, like temperature, pressure, or light.
Okay, I get that. So what's an actuator?
An actuator is like your muscles. It's the part of the system that takes action based on the information it receives from the sensors. So if a sensor detects that the temperature is too high, it might signal an actuator to turn on a fan to cool things down.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like a cause and effect relationship.
Exactly.
Okay. What if they follow up with, can you give an example of a sensor and actuator working together in an automated system? What's a real-world scenario that would really illustrate this?
A simple example is a home heating system. The thermostat acts as the sensor, detecting the room temperature. If the temperature drops below the set point, the thermostat signals the furnace, which is the actuator, to turn on and heat the room.
Okay, that's a perfect example. Everyone can relate to that. All right, to question number 4. How do you ensure that automated systems are running efficiently and effectively? This seems like another one where they're really looking for that proactive thinking.
Absolutely. They want to see that you're not just waiting for problems to arise, but you're actively thinking about ways to prevent them and optimize performance.
So what kind of things would demonstrate that proactive approach?
You could talk about implementing preventative maintenance schedules, like regularly inspecting and cleaning equipment, calibrating sensors, and replacing worn parts before they fail.
Okay, so it's all about being proactive and staying ahead of those potential problems.
Exactly. You could also mention implementing monitoring systems that alert you to potential issues before they become major problems. Or maybe you've developed standardized procedures to optimize system performance.
Those are great examples. Now, let's say they follow up with something like, can you describe a time when you improved the efficiency of an automated system? What was the situation and what actions did you take? How would you tackle that one?
Again, the STAR method is your best friend here. Describe the specific situation, the task you were given, the actions you took to improve efficiency, and the positive results you achieved. Maybe you identified a bottleneck in a production process and implemented a solution to streamline it, resulting in increased throughput and reduced downtime.
Perfect. That's a great example. Before we move on, any tips on how RoleCatcher can help with this type of question?
Oh, absolutely. RoleCatcher can analyze the job description and highlight keywords related to efficiency and optimization. So if the job description mentions things like lean manufacturing or process improvement, RoleCatcher will remind you to emphasize your experience in those areas.
So it's really about making sure your answer is aligned with what the employer is looking for.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, question number 5. How do you approach troubleshooting a complex automated system? The interview guide recommends showcasing your systematic approach to problem solving, right?
Definitely. You want to show them you have a structured process for tackling those complex problems. Think of it like a step-by-step process.
Okay, walk me through it.
First, you gather information. Right. Talk to the operators, review system logs, conduct visual inspections, anything that helps you understand the problem. Then you analyze that information, try to identify potential causes, and formulate a hypothesis. Then you test your hypothesis, maybe by making adjustments or running diagnostics, and finally you implement a solution and document the whole process.
Wow, that's really thorough. So it's all about being organized and methodical?
Exactly.
Now, what if they throw a curveball and ask, have you ever encountered a situation where you couldn't find the solution right away? What did you do? How do you demonstrate resourcefulness and persistence when things get tough?
Honesty is key here. Don't be afraid to admit that you've hit roadblocks before, because everyone does. But what matters is how you handle those situations. Talk about a time you faced a particularly stubborn issue, the steps you took to research and explore potential solutions, and how you ultimately resolved the problem. Maybe you consulted with colleagues, researched online forums, or contacted technical support. The point is to show that you didn't give up and you were willing to seek help when needed.
That's great advice. It shows you're not afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to question number 6. Have you ever developed and implemented a new automated system from scratch? What if you haven't had the chance to lead a project like that yet? How do you approach this question?
That's okay. Not everyone has had the opportunity to lead a project from start to finish, but you can still highlight your involvement in developing or implementing parts of an automated system. Maybe you assisted with the design phase, helped with programming the PLC, or were responsible for testing and validation. Focus on the tasks you're involved in, the skills you utilized, and the lessons you learned along the way.
So it's all about framing your experience in a positive light and highlighting your contributions, even if they weren't the lead role.
Exactly. It's about showing what you're capable of and your eagerness to learn and grow.
Okay, now what if they follow up with, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced during that project, and how did you overcome them?
Be honest about the challenges you encountered, but always focus on the solutions you found and the positive outcomes you achieved. Maybe you ran into a tricky technical issue, had to navigate a communication breakdown, or faced a tight deadline. Highlight your problem-solving skills, your teamwork abilities, and your adaptability.
That's great advice. It's all about showing how you can handle those tough situations and come out on top.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to question number 7. What strategies do you use to minimize downtime for automated systems? This seems like another one where they're really looking for that proactive thinking and preventative approach.
Absolutely. Downtime is a big deal in any manufacturing environment, so they want to see that you understand its impact and you're proactive in minimizing it.
So what kind of things would really impress them?
Talk about your experience with preventative maintenance, like regularly inspecting and cleaning equipment, lubricating moving parts, and replacing worn components before they fail. You could also mention predictive maintenance techniques, like using sensors to monitor equipment performance and identify potential issues before they cause downtime.
Okay, so it's all about staying one step ahead of those potential problems.
Exactly. And if you've implemented any specific strategies or systems that have helped reduce downtime in the past, definitely share those examples.
Great advice. Before we move on, any tips on how RoleCatcher can help with this question?
Oh, for sure. RoleCatcher can analyze the job description for keywords related to system reliability and uptime. If those things are emphasized, RoleCatcher will remind you to highlight your experience in those areas.
Okay, so it's all about tailoring your answer to what the employer is looking for.
Precisely.
Fantastic. On to question number 8. Can you explain the difference between open-loop and closed-loop control systems? The interview guide recommends using clear, concise language and maybe even some helpful analogies.
Analogies are always a good way to explain complex concepts. For open-loop systems, think of a simple timer on a coffee maker. You set it for a certain amount of time, and it runs for that duration, regardless of whether the coffee is actually brewed or not. There's no feedback mechanism.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about a closed-loop system?
A closed-loop system is more like a thermostat. It constantly monitors the temperature and adjusts the heating or cooling accordingly to maintain the desired temperature. So it's constantly getting feedback and making adjustments based on that feedback.
Oh, I like that analogy. It's like the thermostat is thinking for itself, making sure the temperature stays right where it should be.
Exactly. It's a much more sophisticated system.
Now, what if they follow up with, can you give an example of each type of control system used in a real-world application? What examples would you choose?
For an open-loop system, you could mention a simple vending machine. You put your money in, press a button, and the machine dispenses the selected item. It doesn't really monitor whether the item was successfully dispensed or not. For a closed-loop system, think about an industrial robot that uses sensors to monitor its position and movements, making adjustments as needed to ensure accuracy and precision.
Those are great examples. They really illustrate the difference between the two types of systems.
Glad you think so.
Okay, let's move on to question number 9. How do you stay up to date with the latest automation technologies and trends? The interview guide stresses the importance of being specific and really showcasing that passion for continuous learning.
This is your chance to shine as a lifelong learner. Talk about industry conferences you've attended, online courses or certifications you've completed, professional organizations you're a member of, or blogs and publications you follow. Don't just give them a laundry list, though. Briefly explain what you learned from those experiences and how you've applied that knowledge.
Okay, so it's all about showing them you're actively engaged in learning and growing in this field. Now, what if they follow up with, what emerging automation technology are you most excited about and why? How do you make your answer stand out?
Do your research beforehand and choose an emerging technology that genuinely interests you. Maybe it's collaborative robots, cobots, artificial intelligence in manufacturing, or the industrial Internet of Things, IoT. Explain why you're excited about its potential and how you think it could impact the industry.
That's a great way to show your forward thinking and you're keeping an eye on those exciting new developments.
Exactly.
Okay, we've reached the final question in this set. How do you ensure that automated systems are safe for operators and comply with relevant regulations? The interview guide emphasizes the importance of demonstrating your understanding of safety protocols, regulations, and your proactive approach to creating a safe work environment.
Safety should always be a top priority.
Absolutely. So, what kind of things can you talk about to really impress them with your safety knowledge?
Talk about your experience with conducting risk assessments, implementing safety training programs, and enforcing lockout-tagout procedures. Mention specific safety regulations you're familiar with, like OSHA standards and how you've applied them in your work. They want to see that you take safety seriously and you're knowledgeable about the relevant regulations.
Okay, one last follow-up question for you. Can you describe a time you identified a potential safety hazard and the steps you took to address it? What kind of scenario would really demonstrate your proactive approach to safety?
You could talk about a time when you noticed a faulty wiring connection on a piece of equipment. Explain how you immediately shut down the equipment, followed proper lockout-tagout procedures to prevent accidental startup, and alerted the maintenance team to repair the wiring. Emphasize your quick thinking, your adherence to safety protocols, and your commitment to ensuring a safe work environment for everyone.
That's a fantastic example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've really covered a lot of ground in this section, diving deep into those common interview questions and getting some incredibly valuable tips from the interview guide. In part 3, we'll explore those additional resources on RoleCatcher and wrap things up with some final tips to help you nail that interview. All right, welcome back for the final part of our deep dive. I feel like we've covered a ton of ground already.
We really have. We explored the ins and outs of the automation engineering technician role, tackled those tough interview questions, and even dug into some valuable insights from that career guide.
And let's not forget about RoleCatcher and its AI. Seriously, it's like having a secret weapon for interview prep.
Oh, absolutely. It can really help you tailor your answers and stand out from the competition.
Now, remember those links in the interview guide we mentioned? The ones that lead to all those extra resources on RoleCatcher.
Yeah. It's like a whole library of information just waiting to be explored.
So what kind of stuff can you find over there?
Well, they have guides for specific skills like adjusting engineering designs,
Oh, cool.
assembling mechatronic units, programming a CNC controller, all sorts of really practical skills.
Oh, wow. So if there's anything you want to brush up on, you could just dive right in.
Exactly. And they even have interview guides for related careers, too.
Oh, really? Like what?
Like, if you're also considering roles like robotics engineering technician or electronics engineering technician, they've got specific guides for those as well.
So it's like a one-stop shop for all your career prep needs.
Pretty much.
And they have links to other helpful resources too, right? Like those industry organizations and stuff.
Yeah, they've got links to things like the International Engineering Alliance and the Occupational Outlook Handbook. They really go above and beyond to make sure you have all the information you need.
It's pretty impressive. Speaking of going above and beyond, I know you're all about those long-term career goals. We talked about those different career stages, but the career guide also mentioned some valuable certifications, right?
Yeah, those are definitely worth looking into.
Can you tell us a little more about those?
Sure. They highlight certifications like the Certified Automation Professional, or CAP, and the Certified Control Systems Technician, or CCST.
Okay, I've heard of those.
They're basically like gold stars on your resume. They really show potential employers that you have the skills and knowledge to excel in this field.
So they can really give you a competitive edge.
Absolutely. They demonstrate a commitment to professional development and a mastery of those specific skills that employers are looking for.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you know what's cool? RoleCatcher can actually help you figure out if you have any skill gaps you need to fill before pursuing those certifications.
Yeah, that's right. It's like having a personalized roadmap for your career journey. It can show you exactly what you need to work on to reach your goals.
I love that. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the why behind your passion for automation.
Ah, the why. That's the heart of it all, isn't it?
Totally. Why are you drawn to this field? What problems do you want to solve? What impact do you want to make? Having those answers ready can really make you a more memorable candidate.
It shows you're not just looking for any job. You're looking for something that truly aligns with your passions and your values.
Exactly. Okay, before we sign off, any final words of wisdom for our listener as they head into that interview?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. First, do your research. Learn as much as you can about the company, their culture, and the specific role you're applying for.
Right. Preparation is key.
And come prepared with a few thoughtful questions to ask the interviewer. It shows you're engaged and genuinely interested.
Great advice.
But most importantly, be yourself. Let your personality shine through. Don't be afraid to show your enthusiasm, your passion, and your unique skills and experiences.
Yeah, authenticity is so important.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've equipped our listener with everything they need to rock that interview.
I think so too. They've got the knowledge, the insights, and the tools to really impress those hiring managers. And don't forget, RoleCatcher is there to support you every step of the way.
Good luck out there. We're rooting for you.